Welcome to Veronica Live, and we are here with Daniel Bolz, and he is the author of America's Freedom Megaphone, The Case for Building the Statue of Enduring Freedom. Welcome, Daniel, to Veronica Live.
Well, thank you for having me, Veronica, and co-host John. It's a pleasure to be with you, especially from the one of my favorite states, the Florida Gulf Coast.
That's right. You're talking to folks in Freedom, Florida this morning. But tell us about your background first, Daniel, who you are and what you've been up to the last few years.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm a Michigan native, raised in Marquette, Michigan, which is on the shores of Lake Superior, in what's called the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. My dad's a forester. My mother was in theater and was an educator and a musician. Let's see. I went into I'm a third-generation Army veteran. I went in to the Army at the end of the Vietnam War and was stationed with NATO on the Czech border there in southern Germany. I put 12 years in the military and met my wife, Ingrid. She's from eastern Canada. And we've been married now for coming up on 45 years. We raised 4 daughters scattered all over the country, now raising their own families. So life is good, Veronica and John.
I love it. And fast forward, you've written this interesting book, America's Freedom Megaphone, The Case for Building the Statue of Enduring Freedom. And you are on a mission. And, you know, it was funny. I hadn't thought about it, but the West Coast does not have a Statue of Liberty. And that's like your driving mission now in life is to come up and build this statue.
Well, yes, absolutely, and we believe that the time is right to build such a historic monument. We've been involved in this project silently since 2017, and only in the last few months have we kind of started, anyway, to go public with the publication of my book. Our publicist, A.J. Rice and his Publius.com team
Yeah, they're great.
Madly getting me interviews around the country. So we're slowly introducing the Monument Project that way, and there'll be some other ways that we'll be doing that as the budget allows. But yeah, East Coast Statue of Liberty, founding principle, liberty through, of course, the rule of law. And our second founding principle, freedom, through the pursuit of happiness. We believe that America was founded on these two principles, liberty and freedom, and that it's now time and appropriate to have the second principle, freedom, represented by a like monument, same height, 305 feet tall, located on the West Coast. And we can tell you more about the details of the monument itself as we go along.
And why do you think we've never had anything on the West Coast? Because I was thinking about it. I lived in Vegas for 4 years, and, it was the Paris Eiffel Tower in Vegas with, like, the monument, or the Luxor. I don't know. We have these stratospheres in Seattle and Vegas. We have nothing. Why do you think that is? And it takes you to, like, push this forward.
Well, wasn't it Victor Hugo who said that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come, and I believe that's why it hasn't happened to this point. But I do believe also that the times that we are in now demand that we American citizens build this monument, and it will be a rallying cry. It will be a symbol to unite, freedom-loving American patriots from shore to sea, from sea to shining sea, to collectively, again, through a megaphone, that's, what the title of my book is, through a freedom megaphone, yell loud and clear, dignified, but still nonetheless yelling that America was born free.
Well, the problem is you're wanting to build it on the left coast. so between California, Oregon, and Washington, I can't imagine any of those states giving you a favorable environmental report or anything else. They are so anti-freedom, collectively. And I use that word on purpose, because you would almost think they would prefer a statue of of a slave with a ball and chain or something, as their
Maybe
representation of
AOC,
America.
John, AOC.
Yeah.
Well, John, you're right. That is a perception, and to some degree, that is a current reality in the United States. That the left coast is, in fact, the left coast, and they've earned that title, dubious though it be. However, we do believe that, nonetheless, there are many millions of common sense patriots, and there are even many of them on the West Coast. That will support the building of this monument. And the thing is, yes, the location, we can explain why we're selecting the West Coast, but the point is that this monument, historical in nature, will be for and is for the United States collectively. It is not for any one particular state, as it were. I mean, yeah, Lady Liberty is in New York, and there are reasons why, she was built there. And the Brother Freedom will be built on the West Coast, and there are reasons for that. But really, the big picture, in 100 years from now, when all three of us have long since passed on and we're wandering around in heaven somewhere, the monument, both of these monuments, will be standing true to declare their message. And it will have nothing to do with the particular states that they are in or the political, realities of their particular state and location.
Well,
all about America.
It was funny because, you have a website, freedomalliancellc.com, and, I was poking around and you have a bunch of, like, the plan. And so, there's kiosks for kids and things. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, it's so true. We need something on the West Coast, because I know when my daughter was a senior, they went to New York, and that's from Florida, but to get to New York from California, that's a haul. So I love the component of rallying, our future freedom fighters at a young age and having a pilgrimage spot on the West Coast. So where do you think this would be? And like, what's the cost? Those are some questions that I had for you as well.
Sure thing, Veronica and John. Let's see, a couple things. Let me see. First of all, because the Statue of Enduring Freedom there's a lot of symbolism to be involved here, and we are doing our best to respect and honor Lady Liberty, and how she was built, the artistic design, which is classic realism, et cetera, the same height. All of that is very important for basically her kid brother, Brother Freedom, to be built. And so, yes, the Statue of Enduring Freedom will be the same height, 305 feet above ground. The location, we think, is a good symbolism analogy to use to look at the north latitude. So Lady Liberty sits at approximately 40 degrees north latitude. When you swing that over to the West Coast, that puts you into Northern Cal and Southern Oregon. We have identified two cities in Northern California, small towns, and that's fine, but two small towns that both have bays, which would be good for such a monument. So, and as far as cost, we have to fund our phase one right now, and that's mentioned on our website. When those funds are secured, then we will be able to drill down and get final costs on building the monument and building the visitor center, and then, of course, funding the education outreach program that is the real mission of the monument. And your listeners would like to hear this, so let me just mention this. My book introduces a simple solution to our nation's current sickness: to inspire freedom by inspiring our children through educational outreach. It's a propagandized government educational system that got us into the mess that we are in today. Inspiring our children forward to a love of freedom and a love of God is the solution. Truth will prevail and evil will fail. So there's a little bit about what we're all about.
No, I love it. I love it. And how's the reception been on this? I mean, now that my light bulb's gone off, and I think the West Coast, we need this statue ASAP because freedom is a problem.
Well, that's we need it ASAP. And John and Veronica, that's real simple. just cut us a check for several $100 million, and we'll make sure that it gets built in the next 6 months.
Well, anyways, no, I'm excited about this. And I know in your book you talk a lot about, America's founding principles and freedom and how the media lies. And so tell me, because we just had the State of the Union Thursday night, and I joke with John a lot. I walk around with an airstick bag, so I had my little Veronica Live airstick bag next to me, and it was awful. And he yelled at us, and I've heard this. People have been talking about this analogy. It was like grandpa's on the yard and in the grass yelling at you to get off the grass, and I was like, wow, that's kind of what it was. And it was so divisive. So I wanted your thoughts as a conservative liberty fighter.
Well, Veronica and John, I'm looking right now. I watched it diligently. I have 4 pages of notes from the State of the Union address.
Okay.
And I have 2 columns. One is called lies. The other column is called truths. And I totaled up my lies. That was the big column, 24. I identified 24 specific lies that President Biden, laid on us. But I do have, in fairness, I identified 2 truths also, 2 of them.
Oh, do tell. Start there.
Oh my God! It's just embarrassing, in my opinion. To answer your question, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to have an individual like that leading our country.
Oh,
and
so true.
I often say to my friends, I would pay whatever I have to be sat down in a room with George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Barack Obama, and in this case now Joe Biden. To have those 4 individuals sit in a room, close the door, lock the door, and have it mic'd, and have those 4 go at it, as it were, regarding their vision for America, what they've done, what they're doing, and what they intend to do. I would love to have that conversation.
Well, I agree with you. One of the funny takeaways was, I love this. Senator Marco Rubio said that the State of the Union was a proof of life that Biden's alive because obviously they gave him Adderall or something. I was like, I need some of that to clean my house, but anyways, it was so crazy.
Oh, yes. Yes, it was, and it's good, I suppose, that we can chuckle about that and find some degree of humor. And if you dig down much deeper than that, it just produces a lot of sadness. It does.
It does.
What do you, Daniel? What do you think's happened to patriotism in this country? It seems to be out of style, in particularly in the academic quarter. I mean, most people appreciate the military, and I'm just talking about regular, everyday. The deplorables, as Hillary Clinton called them, but the academics just don't. They seem to hate the country for some reason.
Well, and John, you hit the nail on the head. For some reason, that's another pitching my book. That's another reason for you two and your millions of listeners to reach out to Amazon and buy my book. But because I talk about answering your question. For some reason. Every one of the chapters in my book discusses those reasons. And then, of course, we're providing a positive, uplifting solution. That is to build, this historic monument. But so I've said that, but now, John, specifically, let me answer your question. And I'm reading out of my book, if that's okay. We know that something is wrong in America. Our freedoms have not been adequately studied in public education for at least the last 60 years. The very definitions of America's once common vocabulary, such as freedom, democracy, equality of opportunity, responsibility, God, and the balance of power, have been hijacked and politicized in a way that creates, and this is the key, John, your answer, and that in a way that creates ideologues rather than citizens. This loss of knowledge and critical thought is testing the limits of our republic. And so, John, there's a long answer, but it's still succinct. It's all about our education of our children and in the propagandizement of our children, creating ideologues instead of critical, thinking, intelligent citizens. So there's my answer to your question, John.
Okay, so do you think this? I think you and I are about the same age. I grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia, in the late '60s and 70, 71 kind of time frame, and so my idea of freedom in America, I got a really good early exposure to history and why the war started, the Revolutionary War started, what the principles were, the people that were involved, and you juxtapose that with the '60s radicals, the protest movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, and that seems to be what did they go into academia and destroy history? In order to move, I don't know if consciously, I'm presuming this is a conscious movement to move their ideology ahead. Again, when I was in high school, we had to take a course called Communism versus Americanism that taught us, what communism was all about. But that's gone away. That's out of phase, and you may be aware, the Florida legislature is bringing back that course, and there's a huge debate over it.
Well, you're exactly right, John. Again, out of my book, Chapter 2 talks a lot about the educational outreach program of the Statue of Enduring Freedom. We talk about how the infiltration of our American government schools began in the 60s, not only how it began, but why it began, which is probably more important to understand, why it began and why it continues today. The objective of the social engineering liberals who now, are advocating democratic socialism for our form of government instead of a republic, they have specifically infiltrated our educational system, knowing that over time, those individuals will be fodder to be propagandized and will not be free thinking. And that's where we're at today. And that's what we are going to counter with the building of this monument and our educational outreach program.
So do you feel, and John and I talk about this a lot, I personally feel that our society is lacking God and faith and family. And that's one of the reasons that we've lost freedom, because we don't have, these other, I'd say, pillars in your life. So what are your thoughts on that, Daniel?
Absolutely. That is one of the key pillars, again, of our educational outreach program, to reinstate a respect for God and his role in the formation of America. For instance, the phrase that the three of us and your listeners are aware of, and that is American exceptionalism. Mm-hmm. That term has a specific definition, and it has been bastardized, if I can use that term on your radio station.
Good word.
It has been changed, it has been modified, it has been vilified to not mean what it actually means. And so we go into that completely. And yes, the point is there are reasons why a respect for God has been taken out of the schools and out of our country, as it were, out of the public square. There's a reason for that. And it all has to do with the underpinnings of socialism and communism and everybody that is involved in that side wanting to do what? Yeah, that's right. Fundamentally transform America.
Right. Very true. And then the other question is, we're just out of control, our border with all of these illegals. And, my mother was a legal immigrant. My father and mother-in-law were both legal immigrants, but they assimilated. And, I just feel like we're losing our country, and it's not feeling like America with what's going down. So how do
Veronica,
you feel?
Veronica, on the topic of immigrants, Chapter 3, what we do in Chapter 3 of my book it's called Warning Voices from Immigrants. We talk about the history of immigration in the United States, but then, most importantly in that chapter, we quote many, I don't know, maybe it's 25 or 30 immigrants of all different ages, old people and young teenagers and college students who have legally immigrated to the United States from third world countries, from countries where the socialism was, the form of government, or communism, maniac dictators, et cetera, et cetera. So we honor immigrants, we love them, and we love them when they come in to assimilate, basically, to become an American, to embrace our culture, while still keeping their own culture alive and honoring that, but also, equally important, to assimilate into the American culture. And so anyway, we discussed the whole topic of immigration quite a bit in my book in chapter 3.
Okay, well, your book is it's available on Amazon, and it's got 2 5-star reviews. So, is there anything? What? How do people get involved? I mean, is this something you're doing on your own, or are you looking for people to come join
the team, the Freedom Team?
There you go, the Freedom Movement. Yeah, they can join them. The easiest way, John, to do that is to go to our website, freedomalliancellc.com. There they'll get the introduction, overview of the book, and they can order it directly there through Amazon. But more importantly, they'll also be able to get an overview of the project, of the monument. They'll be able to see images and our sculpture of the monument as it's developed right now with our sculptors in Chicago in their studio. So they'll be able to see it. They'll be able to understand the design, the elements that are in Brother Freedom, et cetera, and yeah, they can join as well and help us out that way. So we're just starting. I mean, there it is. I'm a regular citizen. I don't have $10 million in the bank. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. And eventually, if the monument's meant to be, it will happen. And we have plans for that. Don't get me wrong. We have very specific plans to move this project forward. And we're about that as quickly as we can. So Freedom Alliance, for your listeners, freedomalliancellc.com.
And I guess you should, aren't you fully retired now, relaxing, but you have this in your heart. So what is inspiring you to get this done quickly for the world?
Well, yeah, there you go. I guess it's something I believe in, and I have believed in this project and this topic, more specifically the topic, since the early 20s when I wrote that essay that's on our website about preservation of America. So I've been at this in my mind for many, many years. And you're right, I'm retired now, and this is kind of what I'm doing, and my wife helps me and supports me as she can. So there it is.
Well, we've been joined on Veronica Live with Daniel Bolz. He's the author of the book America's Freedom Megaphone, and he's trying to build this this wonderful statue on the West Coast. And you can find more info on Amazon. You can buy the book, and you can go to freedomalliancellc.com. And Daniel, it's been such a pleasure. We love hosting freedom fighters out there that are fighting for our country.
Thanks, Veronica and John. It's been a pleasure, and perhaps we can do this again.
Excellent. Would love that. And we'll be right back on Veronica Live.